Hi guys, I'm Woodcraft Hamster and I thought I'd do one of my little talky videos for you today. And I wanted to talk about a topic that comes up quite often, especially on bushcraft forums and Facebook groups and things like that. And that's the subject of kit junkies. Now I'm the first to admit that I'm certainly fall into that bracket. And I mean, I suppose to start off with, what do we mean by the term kit junkie? I mean, basically it's people that buy a lot of kit, generally kit that you don't necessarily need. It's that kind of magpie syndrome, you know, shiny things. Everyone's always after the newer, the better, whatever the thing may be. And really I just want to give a few of my thoughts and my views, if you like, on that kind of thing. So I mean, to start with, as you know, I buy quite a lot of kit, and you know, I think like most people I end up sort of surfing the net and things like that, and I see something, and whether it's a new knife or a new stove or a saw or an axe or whatever it might be, and I look at it and I think, well, do you know what, that looks like it might be better than the one I currently have, or it might do something a little bit differently. And that's not to confuse it with buying things that you don't already have. You know, take axes as a really good example. You know, I've got dedicated carving axes, I've got bushcraft axes, I've got wood preparation axes, and don't get me wrong, you know, some people could argue that one axe would do pretty much all of those things, and it certainly can do, and I've got some really good all-rounders, but I also do like to have the right tool for the job. And a wood splitting axe, not necessarily a splitting maul, that's something slightly different, but an axe that will split wood, can also be used to carve with, you know, and it can also be used for other things. But I do have that kind of, you know, thing in the back of my mind where I like to have the right tool for the right job, and I think that's certainly part of it. But you know, if you take something maybe like a stove, let's say, you know, I've probably got 7 or 8 of them, and each of them do the same job. They boil water and they cook food. Some of them are bigger and they're better off for car camping, some of them are smaller and better off if I'm going out for a day or maybe a couple of days out in the woods. But you know, I very recently was online and I stopped myself short because I thought, you know what, I really don't need another stove. But actually it would be very easy to do, because I think the one I was looking at, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it was a really small, lightweight, fold-out titanium stove, and I thought, you know what, that's probably a bit better than the one I've got. But I actually took a step back and thought about it and thought, you know what, I really don't need it, so I didn't. Will that stop me buying other things in the future? I think very likely not. But you know, so that's really the essence of sort of kit junkies. It's not like a fashion thing. I don't think it's not. I don't think that many bushcrafters feel the need to have the newest, you know, thing that's on the market, you know, and particularly in terms of brands. You know, I think people tend to favour one brand or another, and you know, it's not like sort of clothing and high street fashions, if you like, where people are after a particular brand because of what it is. But you know, the thing I find with this sort of stigma attached to kit junkies is, you know, why is it a stigma? That's really my biggest question. You know, I totally understand that for some people, you know, their view and perception of bushcraft is by doing things very much on a budget, or doing things with minimal kit, and I have absolutely no issue with that. But at the same time, how can I put this? You know, just because one person wants to go off to do a weekend in the woods with, you know, a 10-litre rucksack with everything they're going to take with them, doesn't mean that somebody that is taking a 50-litre rucksack with a lot more items is doing something wrong, or is not doing, you know, I think the term that comes, you know, proper bushcraft. And you know, don't get me wrong, you can do everything you want to do with bushcraft on a real tight budget, and there's nothing wrong with that, and I did so for many years. It was only really when I sort of started, in fact when I started a particular job and I was earning sort of much better money than I had been historically, you know, I was able to go out and start looking at sort of upgrading certain bits of kit. You know, I was using I think it was an old Eurohike 2-man tent for the good 4 or 5 years, I think, at the early stages of my bushcraft, before I had the money to upgrade that to a better quality, and not only the quality but a smaller pack size, a lighter pack size, that kind of thing. And that's where I think a lot of this sort of kit acquisition comes from, is, you know, you can start off with some fairly cheap and inexpensive stuff, and it will do you really, really well. But you generally find, and this is not the same in all things, but generally with bushcraft kit, the cheaper it is, generally the bulkier it is, or the heavier it is, or both. And you know, as time and money has allowed, I've upgraded to better, inverted commas, better kit, that in my opinion is better solely for the fact that it is smaller and more lightweight, and potentially, though not always, better quality. You know, you've got things like bushcraft knives, and you know, you've heard me say this time and time again. You look at the Mora, the standard Mora clipper or the Mora companion, £10 to £15 online, and you will never go wrong with that knife during your bushcraft career. But some people, myself included, have used it for a number of years and decided, you know what, I want to invest that extra money, whether it's a £50 knife, a £100 knife, a £200 knife. It's not going to do any more for you. It may retain its edge a little bit better, and it may you know, be manufactured of better quality materials, that kind of thing. But you know, I would be quite happy to use nothing but a Mora forevermore. But I've spent that money on more expensive knives, and I'm going to use them. You know, there are people who will buy very expensive knives and keep them on display and things like that and never use them. I'm not saying that's wrong. You know, as far as I'm concerned, it's each to his own. But personally, I couldn't spend £200 on a knife and then not use it. In my mind, just personally for me, that wouldn't be right in my mind, because to me that would be a waste of that money. But again, you know, it's the same way as, you know, people who collect fine china or artwork, that kind of thing. You know, it's not something that I'm into. I don't really get it, but I get the fact that other people do. So going back, I suppose, to the purpose of this video, I'm just keeping an eye on the time here, guys. I don't want this to run on too long. But I suppose really what I wanted to say, and the purpose of this video, is that, you know, you don't have to be a kit junkie to do bushcraft. You can be, and you know, there's no problem doing it either way. You know, I do have a little bit of a problem with the people who maybe turn their noses up a little bit at people who've gone out and bought better quality or more expensive kit, because as I say, as far as I'm concerned, it's each to his own. But you know, you can very, very easily, you know, carry out bushcraft on a budget. You know, you do not need expensive kit, and I suppose that's the crux of this. You know, you don't have to go out every month or every 6 months or every year and upgrade your kit. You don't need to do it. But at the same time, if you want to, and you know, if you want to get that you know, lighter weight setup or less bulky setup, you know, I spent a long time using it was either a 70 or an 80 litre Bergen. Well, in fact, my very first Bergen was a 120 litre PLCE ex-Army Bergen. And what I found was that by having this huge, great big rucksack, you would fill it, and you would carry on filling it until you couldn't get any more in, and then you're yomping along with this great big heavy pack. So probably 7 or 8 years ago, I made a very, in my mind, very important decision, and I bought myself a new Bergen, 50 litres, or 40 plus 10, so it comes up to 50 litres, and I very quickly found that there was no way I could fit as much in that Bergen as I could previously. I still got everything I wanted in there, but I was removing a lot of the junk and a lot of the stuff that I didn't really need. And then as time's gone by, I've upgraded it. I had a really nice snug pack 4-season sleeping bag, but it was about this bloody big. And I upgraded that probably 4 years ago to a Vango Venom 400, I think it was. It's a down sleeping bag. It folds down to a really, really small pack size, and that took a lot of the bulk out of my bag. I'd started off, a lot of my cook set was stainless steel, and as time's gone by I've replaced bits and pieces of it for titanium, and that's cut down on my pack size. You know, silly little things like moving away from boiling the bag meals that you can buy over the counter and making my own with my dehydrator, and that's probably done the most for reducing pack size, especially if you're out for more than 1 or 2 days, and that really does make a difference. So yeah, I mean, I've rambled on a little bit, guys, but as I say, I mean, there seems to be a real stigma attached to this term kit junkie, as if it's a really bad thing. And I think if you're trying to do bushcraft on a budget, then I totally agree with that. You know, you don't want to be going out buying loads of new bits of kit if you're working either to a budget because you genuinely haven't got the cash to go out and splash on things, or because you just don't want to be wasting a lot of money. But at the same time, you know, if you do have the option to buy stuff like that and you want to, I really don't see a problem with it. And as I say, there wasn't really a purpose for this video. It was just something that I've been talking about with people recently, especially online. And you know, there's people like me who kind of think, you know what, if you have the extra cash and there's not anything else that you need to spend it on, then, you know, potentially why not treat yourself? But then again, in the same breath, you know, if you've got that extra money but the kit you've already got is perfectly acceptable and does what you want it to do, you know, do you need to go out and buy something new? I mean, I'm, you know, just around about sort of, you know, the last year or so, I've really scaled back on what I'm spending on my bushcraft, basically because I could probably kit out 3 people from top to toe, Bergens and equipment and everything else included, with all of the gear that I currently own. I have been selling off little bits and pieces of it here and there with stuff that I just really haven't used. But at the same time, you know, I like having that stuff. You know, I like having several stoves, because depending on where I'm going and what I'm doing, there's one stove that maybe is better in some conditions than they are in others. Likewise on the knives, you know, if I'm going, or the axes, or the saws, or all this kind of stuff, you know, some of them work better in certain scenarios. If I'm going out just for an afternoon, I'll probably take my little Baco Laplander. If I'm going out for a weekend and I know I'm going to be processing a lot of firewood, I'll take one of my bigger silky saws. You know, and that works the same for all of my kit. And I think, you know, my kit is a culmination of several years of buying things or trading things and this kind of stuff, and really trying to work out what's best for me. You know, some of it I keep, some of it I pass on, some of it I resell. But really that was it, guys. You know, I've kind of gone off on a bit of a tangent here. But you know, I hope it just gives you something to think about. I'll be really interested to know, actually, you know, whether you guys, you know, are doing your bushcraft on a real budget, or if you are kind of a bit more like me and you kind of get suckered in, especially when you're trawling around online. And that's the worst for me. Weekends and late in the evening, and you kind of going through, especially things like web forums, as I say, Facebook groups, or even online retailers. You know, I've gone on to websites looking for maybe a new fire still, and I've come away £30 or £40 later, you know, with a new tarp, and maybe a few other bits and pieces. And so, you know, I'm really looking at the moment to try and curb my expenditure. You know, I'm still going to be buying new things now and again, but what I'm looking to focus on are things that I don't already have, or at least versions of things that I already have that are very different. You know, there's no point in me going out buying a new tarp. You know, I already have 4 or 5. You know, unless it was something that was completely new to the market that would maybe revolutionise the way I used it, but I really can't see that happening. Likewise with stoves and things like that. But, you know, there are small bits of kit that I don't own, that I've looked at and toyed with for a while, certain types of fire lighting methods, you know, and other little bits and pieces. that maybe I'll be looking at, and hopefully you'll see in the future if I do go with them. So anyway guys, I've rambled on long enough. You know, as I say, this was really just me having a bit of a talk towards the camera. Interested in your thoughts and views on the whole kit junkie thing, whether it's a good thing, a bad thing, or you know, as I feel, you know, everyone each to their own. So that's it. So I hope it was useful. Comments and questions in the box below. Hit like and subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I hope you'll all join me next time. Thanks guys.